Michael had always believed in certainty. Certainty in his choices, his career, and most of all, his relationship. At 28, he had sculpted his life into something admirable: successful job, a beautiful fiancée, and a best friend who had been by his side through every high and low. To the world, he was the man who had it all. Emma, his fiancée, was everything he had ever wanted. She was soft-spoken but strong, graceful but firm in her beliefs. Their love had grown naturally, like a story that had always been meant to unfold. 5 years together, an upcoming wedding in a few months, everything about their future felt inevitable, as if it had already been written. And then there was Ryan. Ryan had been a force in Michael's life since college. Confident, loud, and unapologetically himself, Ryan was the kind of man who owned any room he stepped into. He had always been openly gay, never once shying away from his identity. Where Michael was calculated, Ryan was reckless. Where Michael followed the rules, Ryan challenged them. And yet, despite their differences, their bond was unshakable. Michael had never questioned their friendship, nor had he ever felt the need to. He was straight. That was a fact. The way he and Ryan connected, the way their late-night talks stretched into early mornings, the way Ryan's teasing sometimes lingered in his mind longer than it should, it was all just friendship. A deep, loyal, platonic friendship. At least, that's what he told himself. "Come on, Michael, it's one night," Ryan said, leaning against the counter in Michael's apartment, arms crossed. "We used to go out all the time. What happened to the guy who could actually have fun?" Michael smirked, shaking his head. "That guy grew up. He has a wedding to plan, a career to focus on. A wedding you're not even excited about." The comment landed harder than it should have. Michael scoffed, dismissing it. "That's not true." Ryan raised an eyebrow. "You sure? Because you've been avoiding any real talk about it. You act like it's just another thing to check off a list." Michael exhaled sharply. "I love Emma. That's not what I asked." The silence stretched between them, thick and unyielding. Michael wasn't in the mood to dissect his emotions, especially not with Ryan, who had an infuriating ability to see through his bullshit. "Fine," Michael relented, grabbing his jacket. "One night. But I'm not getting wasted." Ryan grinned. "We'll see about that." The bar was packed, music pulsing through the air like a heartbeat. Michael wasn't the type to drink recklessly, but with Ryan, everything had a way of spiraling. Their conversations flowed easily, as they always did. College memories, bad dates, inside jokes. Ryan's laughter was infectious, and Michael found himself lost in it. He had missed this. The rawness of it. The way Ryan made him feel like he didn't have to be Michael the responsible fiancé, but just Michael. "You ever think about how different things would be if we met under different circumstances?" Ryan asked, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. Michael frowned. "What do you mean?" Ryan tilted his head, studying him. "I mean, what if you weren't straight?" Michael let out a short laugh, shaking his head. "Well, then I guess you'd be my type." It was a joke. It had to be. But the way Ryan's expression didn't change made Michael's stomach tighten. "Would I?" Ryan asked, his voice quieter now. Michael swallowed hard. The question lingered between them, electric and dangerous. "You know I love Emma," he said finally, his voice steadier than he felt. Ryan smirked, but there was something behind it, something Michael couldn't decipher. "I know. But that doesn't mean you haven't thought about it." Michael wanted to protest, to dismiss it outright. But for some reason, he couldn't. Instead, he finished his drink in one long swallow, feeling the warmth burn down his throat. Ryan didn't push. He didn't need to. The seed had already been planted. Later that night, as Michael lay in bed next to Emma, he stared at the ceiling, unable to shake the conversation from his mind. Ryan was wrong. He had never thought about it. Had he? He turned to Emma, watching the soft rise and fall of her breathing. She was his future. She was safe. Predictable. Then why was it Ryan's voice echoing in his head? "That doesn't mean you haven't thought about it." Michael squeezed his eyes shut. Tomorrow, he would push it away. Tomorrow, he would forget. But deep down, he already knew, some things, once acknowledged, could never be undone. The whiskey burned, but Michael welcomed it. Anything to dull the thoughts creeping into his mind, the thoughts he refused to name. He and Ryan had relocated to a quieter bar, one with dim lighting and an atmosphere that made it too easy to speak the kind of truths better left unsaid. The initial buzz of alcohol had settled into something warmer, heavier. Ryan leaned back against the booth, swirling his drink. "So, tell me something real," he said, his gaze sharp. "Something you'd never say sober." Michael smirked, playing along. "I think I'd be a great rock star." Ryan scoffed. "That's not real. Try again." Michael exhaled, drumming his fingers against the table. "Fine. I'm scared." Ryan's playful expression softened. "Of what?" Michael hesitated. He could have said the wedding, commitment, the nagging feeling in his gut that something wasn't quite right. But what came out instead was, "of losing you." Ryan's lips parted slightly, caught off guard. "You're not going to lose me." Michael forced a smile. "A lot will change after I get married." Ryan tilted his head. "Yeah, but we'll still be us." Would they? Michael wasn't so sure. The walk back to Ryan's apartment was slow, the night air cool against Michael's flushed skin. Their conversation had taken on a different tone, quieter, charged with something unspoken. Ryan nudged him playfully. "You're quieter than usual. Regretting all that whiskey?" Michael chuckled, shoving his hands into his pockets. "No. Just thinking." Ryan gave him a knowing look. "Dangerous habit." They reached Ryan's building. Michael should have left. He should have turned around, called a cab, gone home to Emma. But instead, he followed Ryan inside. Ryan kicked off his shoes, stretching. "You can crash here if you want. You shouldn't drive." Michael hesitated. "I should probably." "Stay," Ryan interrupted, meeting his gaze. "Unless you want to leave." The challenge in his voice was unmistakable. Michael's heartbeat pounded in his ears. There was something electric about the air between them, something neither of them seemed willing to break. Ryan stepped closer, his voice softer now. "Tell me to stop." Michael's breath hitched. "Ryan." "You don't have to do anything," Ryan said, his hand barely grazing Michael's wrist. "Just tell me to stop and I will." Michael opened his mouth. The word should have been easy. He should have said it without hesitation. But he didn't. Ryan took another step, closing the distance between them. "Michael." His name was a whisper, a plea. And then, Michael wasn't sure who moved first. All he knew was the press of lips, the heat of Ryan's hands against his skin, the way every nerve in his body ignited. It wasn't soft. It wasn't careful. It was hungry, desperate, a collision of everything they had ignored for too long. Michael's fingers tangled in Ryan's hair, pulling him closer. There was no hesitation, no second-guessing. It was raw, overwhelming, inevitable. He had never kissed a man before, but this didn't feel foreign. It felt terrifyingly right. The world outside disappeared. There was no fiancé, no expectations, no rules. Just this. Just them. But then, reality crashed in. Michael pulled back abruptly, breathing hard. I can't." Ryan's expression was unreadable, but he took a step back, giving Michael space. "I'm sorry," Michael choked out, running a hand through his hair. "I have to go." Ryan didn't try to stop him. He just nodded, eyes dark with something Michael didn't want to name. Michael turned and left without looking back. But even as he stumbled into a cab, heart pounding, lips still tingling, he knew. He would never be able to forget this. Michael had never been a liar. At least, not before now. Sitting across from Emma at their kitchen table, he stirred his coffee, watching as she scrolled through wedding venue options on her laptop. She looked so content, so sure of their future, and it made his stomach twist. "Michael." Emma's voice pulled him back. She smiled, tilting the screen toward him. "Do you like this one? It has a beautiful outdoor space." You always said you wanted a ceremony with a view. He forced himself to nod. Yeah. It's nice. It was a lie. He didn't care about the venue. Hell, he wasn't even sure he cared about the wedding anymore. All he could think about was Ryan. The taste of whiskey on his lips, the feel of his hands gripping Michael's shirt, the way he had looked at him, like he had always known. Michael swallowed hard. I need to go to the office early today. Lot on my plate. Emma gave him a concerned look, but didn't press. Okay. Just don't overwork yourself. He kissed her forehead, ignoring the guilt that burned like acid in his chest. Then he left, not for the office, but for Ryan. Ryan opened the door, eyes unreadable. I was wondering when you'd show up. Michael stepped inside without invitation. We need to talk. Ryan arched an eyebrow. Talk? That's what you're calling it. Michael exhaled sharply. I shouldn't have kissed you. Ryan folded his arms. Shouldn't have, or didn't want to? Ryan. Because, from where I was standing, you definitely wanted to. Michael clenched his jaw. It was a mistake. Ryan's expression flickered. Hurt, maybe, but he masked it quickly. Sure. If that's what you need to tell yourself. Michael raked a hand through his hair. I love Emma. I'm marrying her. Ryan leaned against the counter, eyes sharp. Then why are you here? Silence. Michael had no answer. Ryan's smirk faded. You can lie to yourself, but you can't lie to me. You felt something. And that is why you're here. Michael turned away, hands gripping the back of a chair. He hated this. The way Ryan unraveled him, the way he forced him to confront things he wasn't ready to face. Ryan stepped closer. You think I haven't noticed the way you look at me? The way you always have. Michael's breath hitched, but he didn't turn around. Ryan sighed. I'm not asking you to leave her. I just need you to be honest, with yourself, if nothing else. Michael shut his eyes. Honesty? He wasn't sure he knew what that was anymore. Days passed. Then a week. Michael avoided Ryan. He threw himself into wedding plans, into work, into anything that kept him from thinking too much. But the distance didn't make it easier. If anything, it made it worse. Emma noticed. You've been distracted lately, she said one night, her voice careful. Michael forced a smile. Just work stress. I'm fine. Another lie. Emma hesitated. Are you sure? He kissed her, hoping she wouldn't feel the hesitation in it. Of course. But later that night, as she slept beside him, Michael lay awake, staring at the ceiling. He had kissed Ryan. He had wanted to. And no matter how hard he tried to bury it, the truth wouldn't go away. He was falling. And he didn't know how to stop. Michael had run out of places to hide. For weeks he had tried, burying himself in wedding preparations, in whispered promises to Emma, in the comforting illusion that everything could return to normal. But normal no longer existed. Not after Ryan. Not after the kiss that had undone everything. It happened on a Tuesday. Emma had left early for work, and Michael found himself driving without direction, without thought. His body knew where he was going before his mind could stop it. Ryan opened the door, eyes flickering with something unreadable. Michael. Michael didn't answer. He stepped inside, closing the door behind him, sealing them into something inevitable. Ryan studied him. What are you doing here? Michael exhaled. I don't know. A beat of silence. Then, yes, you do. Michael squeezed his eyes shut. I'm engaged. Ryan took a step closer. And yet, you're here. Michael's breathing was uneven. I don't know what's happening to me. Ryan's voice softened. You do. You just don't want to admit it. Then, without thinking, without hesitating, Michael reached for him. The kiss was desperate, frantic, laced with weeks of repression and something deeper, something terrifying. Ryan didn't pull away. He met him with equal force, hands tangling in Michael's shirt, bodies pressed together. It was reckless. It was wrong. It was everything Michael had been running from. And he didn't stop. He woke up tangled in sheets that weren't his own, the scent of Ryan lingering in the air. Reality came crashing down. Michael sat up abruptly, rubbing his hands over his face. Shit. Ryan watched him from the other side of the bed, expression unreadable. You don't have to freak out. Michael let out a hollow laugh. I just cheated on my fiancée. Again. I think I do have to freak out. Ryan sat up, sighing. Then maybe it's time to ask yourself why. Michael swallowed hard. He already knew the answer. He just wasn't ready to say it out loud. Emma knew before he even spoke. She had seen it in his distance, in his restless nights, in the way his kisses no longer felt like promises. When he finally told her, when he finally let the truth spill from his lips, she didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just looked at him with quiet devastation. Do you love him? Michael's throat tightened. Did he? Yes. But he couldn't say it. Emma exhaled, shaking her head. I think you should go. And just like that, the life he had built with her crumbled. He found himself back at Ryan's door, heart pounding. Ryan opened it slowly. Michael. Michael swallowed. I lost her. Ryan studied him for a long moment. And what do you want now? Michael met his gaze. You. Ryan's expression softened, but there was hesitation. Are you sure? Michael exhaled. I don't know what happens next. I just know that I can't keep pretending. Ryan didn't smile, didn't celebrate. He simply nodded, stepping aside, silently inviting Michael in. And Michael walked through the door.